My girlfriend's family company went bankrupt. To help her parents pay off their astronomical debts, I sold off my own company at a clearance bin price, and even that wasn't enough. I was working 3 jobs a day, grinding on a 24-hour hamster wheel of pure exhaustion. Who could have expected? Right when I was running on fumes, so stressed my head was practically on fire, and suffocating under the weight of this sky-high debt, I found out that this was all nothing but a beautifully orchestrated scam, and her pretending to be bankrupt was simply a plot to force my hand so I would be the one to ask for a divorce. That way, she could frolic out in the open, fully legit, with her so-called platonic male bestie. Later on, I gave her exactly what she wanted, but then she completely lost her marbles, dropping to her knees at my front door like a dramatic soap opera lead, begging me to give her just one more chance. Serafina, when are you going to drop the truth bomb on Callahan? You've been acting so hard you probably believe it yourself by now, right? As I was hauling a tray of drinks past the door of VIP room number 1, a hauntingly familiar voice drifted out from inside. My footsteps hit the brakes. Peeking through the crack of the half-open door, I saw Serafina in a custom haute couture V-neck gown, sitting right in the center of the private room, holding a glass of fancy red wine, and sitting right beside her was her precious white moonlight, the one that got away, Lysander, along with a bunch of her old good-time buddies, both guys and girls. Ever since the Silas group went under 3 months ago, Serafina had cried to me, saying that none of these people wanted to talk to her anymore, and that they would never hang out again. I genuinely hadn't seen these people since, but right now they were all sitting together, clinking glasses, with a level of chummy familiarity that was exactly the same as in the good old days. My hand gripping the serving tray tightened involuntarily. A wave of intense unease surged up in my chest. My feet felt like they were nailed to the floor, completely unable to move a single inch. The truth? What truth? There was a brief moment of silence inside the room. Then, Serafina's voice rang out, dripping with contempt and sarcasm. She said, "Give it a few more days. I'm getting sick and tired of acting too. I really didn't expect that even after fooling his family into thinking my family went totally broke and making him help my dad fill the financial black hole, he still refuses to get a divorce. He's like a piece of chewed gum stuck to my shoe. It's absolutely nauseating." A chorus of laughter erupted from the room, and my heart violently plummeted into my stomach. Someone chimed in. "I heard that for the past few months, to help your family pay off debts, Callahan has been working 3 jobs a day. If he finds out your bankruptcy is a complete fake and that you just wanted to use a fake bankruptcy to make him file for divorce himself, his facial expression is going to be absolutely priceless. Ha 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 ha. There's no way he knows the Silas family isn't bankrupt, right? Otherwise, how could he know the Silas family owed tens of billions and still refuse to leave you?" another person asked. Heh, someone sneered. "He's probably still having sweet delusions that once the Silas family makes a comeback, we'll remember how great of a son-in-law he was. All this hard work lately is just him putting on a show. Just watch. 3 months is his absolute limit. I bet he won't last another few days." They actually started taking bets on how much longer I could hold out. Whatever garbage they spouted after that, I didn't stay to listen. Numbly, I delivered the drinks to the customers, and then I marched straight to the manager and quit. The manager looked pretty annoyed, which made sense since today was only my 3rd day on the job. This was my 4th side hustle, and I hadn't even let Serafina know about it yet. Previously, when I was working 3 jobs, she put on a sad face and told me I was working too hard, telling me I didn't need to exhaust myself, and that she would also work hard to earn money to pay the debt. I was afraid she would worry, so I hadn't planned on telling her, and thank God I didn't tell her. Otherwise, I wouldn't have discovered the juicy truth today. I wouldn't have known that she actually loathed me to such a toxic degree that she could cook up a scheme like faking a bankruptcy just to corner me into asking for a divorce. When she watched me tirelessly stuff my hard-earned gig money into our little piggy bank every single day, she must have been laughing her head off internally at how astronomically stupid I was, right? Honestly, I felt stupid too. To think I actually bought the whole Silas family went bankrupt sob story. To think I actually wanted to break my back making money to help them pay their debts. To think I actually had the delusional audacity to want to spend the rest of my life with her. After leaving the bar, I headed straight back to our dingy rental room. Ever since she claimed the Silas family went belly up, I had used the last few thousand in cash. I had to rent this tiny single room. Serafina and I were practically childhood sweethearts. My parents and her parents were tight, and our families were neighbors. From kindergarten all the way to high school, we were always in the same class. Whenever the elders sat around eating and chatting, they would always use us as the punchline, joking that we were betrothed since birth. When I was very young, I truly believed that when I grew up, I was definitely going to marry her. And she used to be genuinely good to me, too. At least, she was good before Lysander crashed into the picture. My first fist fight was for her. My first time skipping school was for her. My first time talking back to the elders was also for her. Back then, the way she looked at me always had a sparkle in her eyes. She asked me why I treated her so well. I told her she was my future wife, and anyone bullying her was basically bullying me. She got mad but also blushed furiously, saying she wouldn't marry me even if I begged. Because she choked during the college entrance exams, we didn't end up going to the same university. On the day of enrollment, at the airport, she hugged me tight, viciously warning me not to even glance at other girls. She said once we graduated from college, we would get married, and I kept my end of the bargain. Throughout college, I rejected every single girl who showed interest in me, but she she went and fell head over heels for Lysander at her university. We slowly drifted into two parallel lines, no longer having any intersection whatsoever. I originally thought we would just become the most familiar of strangers, only nodding in greeting when we met, before brushing past each other. But during my senior year, a brutal car accident took both of my parents' lives. I had to start learning how to manage the company. The death of my parents and the relentless bullying from the shareholders felt like two massive mountains crushing down on me, almost breaking my spine. My mental state during that time was absolute trash. Grandpa Silas told Serafina to come back and keep me company. He also had the idea of having us get married. After all, if I married Serafina, I would have the backing of the Silas group. The shareholders of my company wouldn't dare to target me too aggressively. At first, Serafina fought it tooth and nail. I knew she had someone else in her heart, and I didn't want to drag her down. But later, I don't know what kind of drama went down between her and Lysander. They broke up. During that phase, she drank herself into a stupor every single day. Every time she came home, Grandpa Silas would curse her out, and then lock her in the house, forbidding her to go out. She would behave for a few days, and then sneak right back out to drink. One time she got completely wasted, and the bartender called my number, telling me to come pick her up. From then on, every time she got drunk, the bartenders would call me. Then one time she was so intensely intoxicated, she hallucinated and thought I was Lysander. That day my eldest uncle had just come to my house to throw a massive tantrum. I was in a foul mood, and I had thrown back a few drinks myself. I lost control. Not long after, Grandpa Silas somehow found out about this glorious mess. He basically put a gun to my head and forced me to get the marriage certificate with Serafina. Serafina, acting like a broken pot ready to be smashed, just agreed to it, and I, figuring that things between her and Lysander were totally dead, the thought that once we got married, I would spend the rest of my life treating her like a queen, and never let her feel sad again. After we got married, even though Serafina treated me well, having witnessed the fiery, passionate love she had for Lysander, I naturally knew her affection for me was probably just her playing her part on a stage. I have no idea when she and Lysander reconnected. I just never ever expected that she would use a method this toxic to force me into a divorce. To plug the so-called financial black hole of the Silas family, I even liquidated the Callahan estate, the company my parents left me, and handed every single penny of the funds over to her. And what did I buy with it? Her ultimate betrayal. Honestly, if she had just spelled it out for me, I wouldn't have clung to her. No matter how much I loved her, I hadn't loved her to the point of throwing away my dignity, shamelessly harassing her. Around midnight, Serafina finally came back. She had changed out of her fancy dress and into the t-shirt and jeans she wore before leaving the house. The outfit I bought her for $40 at the wholesale market. In the past, she wore nothing but bespoke pieces or high-end couture. Bargain bin trash like this wouldn't even be allowed in her line of sight. Making her live this peasant life for the past 3 months must have really been sheer torture for her. Seeing that I was still awake, she looked a little surprised. She asked, "Why aren't you asleep yet? Were you waiting for me?" "I just got back from my part-time job and happened to bring some late-night snacks. Do you want to eat a bit?" I stared at her with a completely flat expression, desperately trying to find even a microscopic trace of guilt in her eyes. But no, nothing. She was as calm as a cucumber. I really wanted to ask her. Going to such lengths to scam me for 3 whole months? Was it fun? But asking would be entirely pointless. She popped open the styrofoam takeout box, expertly snapped the disposable chopsticks apart, and handed them to me. The smell of stir-fried rice noodles wafted through the drafty rental room. I lowered my eyes to look at her hand holding the chopsticks, blinked, and forcibly swallowed the bitter bile rising in my throat. I said, "Serafina, let's get a divorce." Clatter. The chopsticks in her hand hit the floor. The smile on her face instantly glitched and froze. I seriously didn't understand why she was putting on a face of absolute disbelief and confusion. She was disgusted by me to the core, right? I offer a divorce. Shouldn't she feel liberated? Why put on this dramatic performance right now? Who is the audience supposed to be? She asked. Is it because the Silas family went bankrupt that you now despise me? Do you think I'm just dead weight? Seeing the hurt in her eyes, I kind of wanted to laugh, but my eyes betrayed me and turned red anyway. She was clearly the one who faked a bankruptcy to pressure me into initiating the divorce. Now that I was granting her wish, she actually had the nerve to play the victim card, accusing me of despising her. I rubbed my temples and said, "Serafina, don't you think the version of you right now is absolutely nauseating?" I never imagined that the girl who used to hold my hand and say we'd never be apart for a lifetime would mutate into something like this. If she liked Lysander, that was fine. If she wanted to divorce me to be with him, that was fine too. But she shouldn't have used such a dirty, underhanded tactic to force me into bringing up the divorce, just so she could skip over to Lysander completely guilt-free. Her pupils violently contracted. She grabbed my hand, her face twisting with anger, and the way she looked at me was highly aggressive. She said, "Callahan, when the Silas family went bankrupt, you were the one who said it yourself. You said no matter what happened in the future, you would never abandon me. And you wouldn't just dump me after making promises. It's only been 3 months and you're already exposing your true colors, even calling me nauseating." I forcefully shook off her hand, stepped back a few paces, and stared at her ice cold. I said, "I did say that, but the reality is, the Silas family never went bankrupt at all. You purposely put on a poor me act right in front of my face, just to force me to play the villain, to be the one to actively ask for the divorce, so that tiny, pathetic speck of guilt in your heart would vanish without a trace. Am I wrong? Plotting against me like this? Doesn't that make you nauseating? Serafina's face instantly darkened. She opened her mouth as if trying to cook up some excuse to defend herself, but ultimately, she just stayed silent. This face of hers, I used to look at it and feel my heart flutter. Now, I didn't even want to spare it a second glance. I said, pack your things and move out tonight. Tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., I'll be waiting for you at the entrance of the Civil Affairs Bureau. Oh, and by the way, the assets of the Callahan family that I liquidated back then, kindly spit every single penny back out to me. Seeing Serafina standing there in absolute mute silence, I lost whatever microscopic amount of patience I had left. I directly contacted Lysander to come pick her up, telling him to conveniently bring her a change of clothes while he was at it. Lysander was a smart guy. He naturally understood that my contacting him meant I had laid all the cards on the table with Serafina. In less than half an hour, he rushed over, looking at him, driving a luxury sports car, wearing a designer watch, radiating smug, high-flying energy. I felt that my past 3 months of juggling multiple jobs every single day was truly the punchline of a pathetic joke. My disgust for Serafina hit a new high. So she was basically using my hard-earned cash to fund her little boy toy, huh? I looked at Serafina, trying my hardest to keep my voice from trembling. I said, the clothes you're wearing right now were bought by me. Change out of them and get lost. After saying that, I turned around and walked out of the rental room. Lysander followed me out shortly after. He said, Serafina, she just didn't know how to break it to you. That's why she came up with this idea, hoping you would be the one to proactively divorce her. Our original intention was never to hurt you. I turned my head and glared at him. My eyes dragged across his flawless, perfectly manicured hands. I let out a mocking, cynical laugh and shoved my own hands, covered in scars, blisters, and thick calluses, right into his face. I really truly wanted to know how he had the sheer audacity to utter the words, didn't want to hurt you. I said, this is what you call not wanting to hurt me. For the past 3 months, I slept 4 hours a night. When I wasn't sleeping, I was either working a gig or running to the next gig. Just to save 2 lousy bucks on bus fare, I walked 5 kilometers back and forth between 2 part-time jobs every single day. At first, my feet were completely covered in blisters. I endured the agony and popped them with a needle. After a full torturous half-month, my feet grew a thick layer of calluses, and I stopped getting blisters. And now all of this has just become a massive joke. From start to finish, you and Serafina were standing in the shadows laughing at me, betting on exactly when I would crash and burn and finally leave her. But I never ever imagined that my love for her would one day become the very weapon she used to butcher me. Lysander bit his lower lip, lowered his eyes, and said, Mr. Callahan, I am sorry, but Serafina and I are true love. I could no longer suppress the volcanic rage erupting inside me. I glared at him with glacial eyes and snapped, true love? Do you actually think that wrapping your disgusting, toxic actions in the shiny foil of true love makes you look exceptionally noble? If you had just openly and honestly admitted that you were a couple of scumbags trying to force me out, maybe I would have actually given you a tiny shred of respect. Lysander frowned. Just as he was about to fire back, his gaze suddenly shot past me to something behind my back. Serafina. His expression instantly shifted to one of utter helplessness. His eyes even managed to squeeze out a hint of practiced grievance. He whined, Mr. Callahan misunderstood us. You have to explain it to him. We really didn't want to hurt him from the start. Serafina emerged wearing a custom haute couture gown. Her figure was smoking hot, so beautiful it was almost impossible to look away. She looked absolutely nothing like the woman who was just wearing a cheap $20 t-shirt and jeans a minute ago. This was exactly how she was supposed to look, but to me, she just looked like a total stranger. She walked right up to Lysander, blocking my view of him like a human shield. She said, this whole thing was my decision. It has absolutely nothing to do with Lysander. If you want to blame someone, blame me. Watching her guard Lysander like a mother hen, terrified I might do something to him. My heart felt like it was violently yanked by a wire, tearing with an agonizing pain. See, when it comes to the people she actually cares about, she never lets anyone lay a finger on them. And me? I had been kicked out of her VIP zone a long time ago. But whatever, this was for the best. At least I wouldn't harbor any more pathetic hopes for her, nor would I be hopelessly trapped in the quicksand of our beautiful past memories. I took a deep breath and slowly said, I should blame you. The very millisecond the words left my mouth, smack! A crisp, explosive sound echoed. I raised my hand and slapped her directly across the face. Because I used so much brute force, my own hand went slightly numb. On Serafina's originally pale and flawless cheek, a bright red handprint rapidly bloomed. Serafina! Lysander grabbed her in a panic and glared at me, his eyes overflowing with righteous fury. I casually rubbed my stinging hand, staring blankly at Serafina with zero expression. I said, you scammed me for 3 months straight. I give you one slap. Consider yourself getting off extremely lightly. Lysander gritted his teeth and hissed, Callahan, don't you think you've crossed the line? No one has ever dared to lay a hand on Serafina. I looked at him nonchalantly and replied, then did anyone ever tell you that no one has ever dared to mess with me like this either? Back when my parents were still alive, my personality was practically lawless. Everyone in my circle knew I had a garbage temper, and very few people actively came looking for a death wish from me. After they died in the car crash, I dialed it back a lot over the years. But that doesn't mean my spine was removed. Lysander scowled. Just as he was about to run his mouth again, Serafina grabbed his arm. Under the dim glow of the street lamp, her expression was dark and unreadable. She said, Lysander, stop talking. Serafina continued, I was the one who wronged him in the first place. After this slap, I owe him nothing anymore. Let's go. Lysander shot me a look full of bitter resentment, but ultimately kept his trap shut and followed Seraphina away into the night. I turned around, went back into the rental room, and spent the entire night purging every single item related to Seraphina, chucking them all into the dumpster. Keeping that stuff around was just bad juju. By the time I finished taking out the trash, it was already past 6 a.m. The sky was beginning to show a fish belly white. I decided to just skip sleeping entirely. I grabbed my ID, my household register, and the marriage certificate, and headed straight to the Civil Affairs Bureau to wait at the door. At 8 a.m. sharp, Seraphina arrived at the entrance right on the dot. I didn't feel like wasting breath on her, so I just turned on my heel and marched straight into the bureau. The divorce process was smooth as butter. Aside from the company my parents left behind, Seraphina actually threw in an extra tens of millions and 2 luxury villas. I accepted it all. Then I turned right around and donated it to a charity foundation. Might as well rack up some good karma. After getting the shiny new divorce certificate, I walked out of the bureau and was just about to hail a cab to bounce when she suddenly called out to me. She said, "About tricking you before, I'm sorry." When she said this, her attitude actually seemed sincere, and her expression carried a hint of genuine apology. I laughed. "Save it. If apologies actually worked, what the hell do we need judges for?" Her brows furrowed. She looked like she was about to say something else, but suddenly her gaze froze. I followed her line of sight downward and realized I was still wearing the silver ring on my hand. This ring was the one she had convinced me to buy at a street stall. We used it to replace our actual wedding rings, which we supposedly had to sell to pay off the debt. I had felt that no matter what, we shouldn't sell the wedding rings, but she looked at me with absolute sincerity and said, no matter the monetary value of the ring, the most important thing was whether the people wearing them loved each other. She said the worst case scenario was, we'd just buy new ones once we had money again. I was so deeply moved at the time. I genuinely thought my years of hard work had finally made her fall in love with me again. After that, I treated this cheap ring like a sacred treasure. Every night before bed, I would carefully polish it. Back then, she must have been laughing herself into a coma at how utterly stupid I was, right? Thinking about it now, I really was pathetically dumb, swallowing whatever garbage people fed me. I lowered my eyes, slid the ring off my finger, and casually flicked it right into the nearby trash can. I said, "Don't flatter yourself. I just forgot to throw it out when I was taking out the trash last night." Her lips twitched. Her expression looked incredibly sour and strained. I frowned. Seeing her hesitate and act all tortured, I found it utterly bizarre. She divorced me. Shouldn't she feel like a massive weight was lifted off her shoulders? Shouldn't she be sprinting to Lysander to pop some champagne? Why was she acting like somebody owed her a few $1,000,000? I didn't bother entertaining her any further. I was just getting ready to flag down a car to leave, when suddenly a cherry red Lamborghini screeched to a halt right in front of me. Inside the car, Alara's face was glowing with joy. She yelled at me, "Callahan, congrats on escaping the bitter sea. If you're considering a second marriage, keep me in mind." Seraphina's face turned completely ugly. She glared at her icily and snapped, "Alara, even a joke needs to have a limit." Alara had been in the same class as us since elementary school. The few of us were originally all good friends, but in middle school, she and Seraphina had a massive falling out over God knows what, and they became mortal enemies. Over the years, she and Seraphina were always at each other's throats on the internet. Today you expose my dark secrets. Tomorrow I spread rumors about you. Back and forth, an eye for an eye, looking like they were ready to fight to the actual death. I basically had zero interaction with her, so how on earth did she know that Seraphina and I were getting divorced today? Before I could wrap my head around it, Alara continued, "Seraphina, whether I'm joking or not, you know perfectly well." Having said that, she stepped right out of the car, strutted up to me and said, "Callahan, even though saying this right now might be a bit too fast, but if you're willing to marry me, we can walk right back inside and get the certificate right this second." I froze for a second, and then felt completely speechless. I said, "Miss Alara, I am very busy. I don't have time to play these childish games with you," she retorted. "Who told you I'm playing games?" She practically shoved her household register right into my face, and with a dead serious expression, she declared, "I am dead serious. I've liked you since middle school. All these years, it's never changed." I frowned, highly doubting the validity of her statement. If she had said she was doing this purely to gross out Seraphina, I might have actually believed her. But saying she liked me since middle school? I hadn't seen even a microscopic fraction of a hint of that. Seraphina's emotions suddenly spiked. She lunged forward and slapped Alara right across the face. The two women instantly started tearing into each other. I was way too lazy to stand there and watch a cat fight, so I just hailed a cab and left. It wasn't like they were going to kill each other anyway. Plus, two grown women throwing hands in broad daylight right in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau? Me, a grown man, just standing on the sidelines watching? It felt too damn embarrassing. Seraphina moved fast. It didn't even take 2 days for her to transfer the company back to me. She didn't come in person, but sent a lawyer to find me instead, which was perfect because I really didn't want to see her face again anyway. After reclaiming the CEO seat, I was so busy every single day my feet barely touched the ground. My life was so much more fulfilling than before. Honestly, so if Alara hadn't kept pestering me, I felt my life would be even happier. Ever since I divorced Seraphina, Alara was constantly ambushing me downstairs at my company. Sometimes she asked me out to dinner. Sometimes she used discussing business collaborations as a flimsy excuse to drop massive hints about wanting to date me. After being harassed by her for half a month, I absolutely couldn't take it anymore. Finally, the next time she showed up, I stopped her. "Alara, we need to talk." She raised an eyebrow and smirked. "Sure thing. Are we talking about dating?" I rolled my eyes into the back of my head. With a serious face, I said, "Please stop pestering me from now on. Even if you really did like me in middle school, we are both adults now. I've changed a lot too. Have you ever considered that what you like isn't me, but just the idea of me?" Alara frowned. "What idea?" I said. "You like the past version of me. But right now, I am no longer that boy from middle school. Do you understand?" Alara nodded and said, "I understand. But whether it's the past you or the current you, I like both. I'm very sure I want to spend the rest of my life with you. No one else will do, only you." Her eyes were overflowing with terrifying sincerity. I blanked out for a second, and my heart inexplicably skipped a beat. I realized as then, she genuinely liked me. But even the most sincere feelings in the world can be ground into dust by the passage of time. Serafina used to look at me with that exact same look in her eyes. And what happened in the end? She casually fell in love with another man. I said, "Even if you really do like me, Before I could even finish my sentence, Alara cut me off. She said, "Callahan, I know you haven't healed from the trauma of your last failed relationship, so I am willing to wait. If you're worried I'm going to scheme for your assets like Serafina did, I can tell you right now, not only do I not want a single dime of a bride price, I am also more than willing to sign a bulletproof prenuptial agreement with you." Seeing that she seemed completely serious about this, I quickly rejected her. "No need. Let me just be blunt with you. I don't like you. Right now, for me, managing the company my parents left behind is my top priority. Romance is entirely off the table for the time being." Alara nodded. "I know, and I told you I will wait. I just hope that if you ever do decide to start dating again, I can be the #1 candidate on your wait list." Meeting her gentle, love-filled gaze, for a moment, I actually couldn't find the words to shoot her down again. After a long silence, I still ended up telling her I hoped she would dial back the frequency of her visits to my company. After all, it was starting to mess with my normal daily life. Alara agreed. From that day on, she did indeed stop physically showing up every day. But she started treating my WeChat like a live feed itinerary. "Work is so boring today. Want to see you? I'm on a business trip. It's raining here in City C. Miss you. I'll bring you back some local snacks. Thinking about you so much I got insomnia. Can you send me a voice memo? If I don't hear your voice, I might be awake all night." The sheer volume of messages like these was practically uncountable. It took me exactly 3 days to go from speechless to selectively blind. I seriously suspected she had been possessed by a clingy ghost. Because in my memory, even though Alara was a woman, she had taken over her family's corporate empire at the age of 23. In the ruthless business world, she was known as an iron-fisted, decisive boss lady. Her actual personality completely failed to match the image of the girl sending me these gooey text messages. However, aside from spamming my phone every day, after I took over the company, there were several times I almost stepped on massive corporate landmines, and she was the one who pulled me out. Gradually, the relationship between us slowly thawed out. It almost felt like we had time traveled back to middle school, before she and Serafina had their legendary fallout. Except, I still had no intention of dating her. After all, tasting the bitter poison of love once was enough for a lifetime. The next time I saw Serafina was an entire month later. Grandpa Silas found out about our divorce. He was so furious he literally gave himself a heart attack and was rushed to the hospital. Backed into a corner, she contacted me. Even though I absolutely dreaded seeing Serafina, Grandpa Silas had always treated me incredibly well. Whether through logic or emotion, I had to go see him. When I arrived at the door of the hospital room, Serafina and Lysander were both there. Lysander was looking like a kicked puppy, head hanging low, while Serafina was busy comforting him. I knocked on the door. Once he knew it was me, Grandpa Silas immediately told me to come in. From his mouth, I finally learned that Serafina and Lysander had been out shopping and got caught red-handed by Grandpa Silas. He thought Serafina was having an affair. He cursed Lysander out right there on the street, calling him a shameless homewrecker. So Serafina dropped the bomb about our divorce. Seeing that Grandpa Silas was still pretty worked up, I quickly rushed to calm him down. I waited until his emotions completely stabilized, then stood up, preparing to leave. He said, "Callahan, is the matter of your divorce?" Really completely unrelated to that man. Looking at Grandpa Silas's heartbroken eyes for a split second, I had the overwhelming urge to spill the entire ugly truth, but I couldn't do it. Grandpa Silas had a bad heart, and he doted on Serafina, his granddaughter, more than anyone. If he knew the truth, he would probably be devastated. Who knows, his body might just give out entirely. Plus, whatever was between us was already dead and buried in the past. Why dig up the corpse just to hurt Grandpa Silas all over again? I forced a smile and nodded. I said, "Yeah, she and Mr. Lysander got together after we divorced. Serafina and I separated peacefully. The feelings were just gone. Staying together would have only caused us both pain. She and I were just not meant to be. Besides, I actually have a new girlfriend now. When the time is right, I'll bring her to meet you." Grandpa Silas stared at me for a long time. Finally, he let out a heavy sigh. He said, Forget it. I'm getting old. You young people's business. I can't control it anymore. Do whatever you want." Stepping out of the hospital room, Serafina quietly whispered a thank you to me. She must have eavesdropped on everything I said to Grandpa Silas inside the room. I said, "No need to thank me. I kept the truth to myself, purely because I didn't want Grandpa Silas to suffer another shock. It has absolutely zero to do with you." Serafina nodded, a strange, complicated emotion flashing in her eyes. She said, I know, did you really start dating someone? I frowned and said, that is my privacy. I hardly think there's a need to report that to you. She pursed her lips. Sorry, I said, Grandpa Silas's mood is stable for now. I still have things to handle at the company. I'm heading back. With that, I turned and walked away. After that day, Serafina and Lysander started aggressively flaunting their high-profile romance. They completely stopped hiding it. I had zero desire to pay attention to them, but the two of them were constantly plastered across the entertainment headlines. Even the employees at my company were gossiping about it. Lysander liked luxury cars. She casually tossed tens of millions to buy him an entire garage full of sports cars. Lysander liked mega mansions. She tossed another few tens of millions to buy him a riverside villa. Lysander had a weak constitution. She hiked to the peak of the Himalayas on foot, carving his name into a rock just to pray for his well-being. Hearing all this, I wasn't surprised in the slightest. When she loved someone, she definitely threw her entire soul and all her effort into it. Just like when we were young. When I was sick, she would brave a torrential downpour to buy me wontons and gently feed me medicine. Even though she couldn't swim to save her life, she would still go scuba diving with me, just to look at the vibrant, surreal underwater world. She hated crowds, but would still hug me tightly in the middle of a deafening, packed stadium. Young love was fiery and sincere, but also incredibly short-lived. Once it burned out, all that was left was a pile of ash. One gust of wind and it vanished completely. Discovering Serafina's car parked right beneath my apartment building happened on a random rainy night. I was woken up by a clap of thunder, remembered I hadn't closed the living room window, and went to shut it. Just as a bolt of lightning flashed across the sky, I spotted that cherry-red Ferrari parked right downstairs. Recognizing it as Serafina's car, I frowned. I ignored it, locked the window, and went right back to sleep. However, in the days that followed, I noticed that practically 3 or 4 nights a week, her car was parked under my building. Once or twice you could call a coincidence, but this many times forced me to suspect she was doing it on purpose. She was already skipping happily into the sunset with Lysander with zero obstacles in her way. What kind of psycho episode was she having sneaking to my building in the middle of the night? I snapped a picture of the car, found a mutual friend in our circle, and asked him to forward the pic to Lysander. Not long after, the car downstairs pieced out. For a while after that, Serafina's car didn't show up in my neighborhood again. I thought this stupid saga was finally over. I didn't expect Lysander to suddenly come looking for me. He said, Mr. Callahan, I originally shouldn't have come to find you, but I thought about it for a long time and I still feel I need to explain things on Serafina's behalf. She came to find you because she wanted to ask you to go visit Grandpa Silas. But because of what happened before, she's always felt guilty toward you. So I frowned and cut him off. What happened to Grandpa Silas? Lysander let out a heavy sigh and slowly said, lately, his health has been rapidly deteriorating. He was hospitalized half a month ago. The doctors said he probably has a month left at most. By the time I rushed to the hospital, Serafina was feeding Grandpa Silas. I hadn't seen him in a while and he had become drastically thinner. His energy was a mere shadow of what it used to be. My heart sank, and my vision slowly began to blur. Ever since my parents passed away, the person who treated me best in this world was Grandpa Silas. But after divorcing Serafina just to avoid running into her, I practically never went to visit him. I didn't even know he had been hospitalized until someone else had to tell me. Choking back tears, I walked up to him. Grandpa Silas. He called out to me, Callahan, you're here. Why are your eyes so red? Did something happen? I shook my head, forcibly swallowing the tears back down. A real man doesn't cry easily, and I didn't want to make Grandpa Silas sad again. Grandpa Silas glared at Serafina and snapped irritably. Oh, for crying out loud. Did you do something to piss Callahan off again? Otherwise, why would his face look so awful? I totally expected Serafina to argue back, but surprisingly, she just raised her eyes and looked at me, her gaze swirling with complicated emotions. I took a deep breath to stabilize myself, looked at Grandpa Silas and said, Grandpa Silas, she didn't make me mad. I just haven't seen you in so long. I missed you. Sitting down by the edge of the hospital bed, looking at Grandpa Silas's frail appearance, the grief in my heart became impossible to suppress. Thinking that he only had 1 month left to live, I was eaten alive by regret for not visiting him more often. After Grandpa Silas finished eating and fell asleep, Serafina and I walked out of the room. In the dead silent hallway, I glared at her icily and lowered my voice to say, Why didn't you tell me Grandpa Silas was sick? Serafina's face looked dark and gloomy. She looked up at me and said, We are already divorced. I didn't want to trouble you anymore. I said, Don't you think doing this is incredibly selfish? Grandpa Silas watched me grow up. Yes, you and I are divorced, but my relationship with you and my relationship with others, I keep them completely separate. I wouldn't take my anger toward you out on someone else. Serafina pursed her lips, staring at me without saying a word. I took a deep breath to cool my head and said with cold indifference, I know you don't want to see me. The feeling is 100% mutual. But Grandpa Silas doesn't have much time left. I plan on coming here every single day to spend some time with him. You arrange the schedule. Even though I didn't love Serafina anymore, I also couldn't stomach the idea of watching her and Lysander acting all lovey-dovey in front of me, while I had to pretend everything was totally fine. She said, I never said I didn't want to see you. Regarding this highly ambiguous, passive-aggressive comment, I couldn't help but frown. Whatever. Anyway, I expect that when I come to see Grandpa Silas, you and Lysander will magically not be anywhere in my line of sight. Serafina fell silent. After a while, she spoke up. When you want to come see Grandpa, send me a text. I will arrange the time. Fine. I pulled Serafina out of my blocked contacts list. For the next while, other than sending her a text in advance when I was going to see Grandpa Silas, we had absolutely zero interaction. One day, a month later, while I was pushing Grandpa Silas in his wheelchair for a stroll in the hospital's garden, he suddenly spoke up. Callahan, I have something I want to say to you. I walked around to the front of his wheelchair and crouched down, squeezing out a strained smile. I asked, Grandpa, what do you want to say? For the entire past month, he had never spoken to me in such a solemn, heavy tone. Grandpa Silas had a kind, peaceful smile on his face. He said, Callahan, I know I don't have much time left. You coming to see me every day for the past month has made me very happy. A wave of sheer panic surged in my chest. I had tried my absolute best to act perfectly calm this whole month, but at this exact moment, an oceanic wave of grief threatened to drown me. I said, Grandpa, don't say that. Your body will definitely recover. Grandpa Silas shook his head, his face an image of total serenity. He said, I know my own body best. Having lived to this age, I have no regrets. The only thing I can't let go of is you. Even though you never said a word, I know perfectly well, it was Serafina who wronged you. That's why I absolutely refuse to accept that other man. You and Serafina were just not fated to be, but I have always treated you as my own biological grandson. I truly hope that in the future, you will meet someone who genuinely treats you well. Grandpa, he interrupted me. Let me finish. He pulled a bank card out of his pocket and handed it to me, speaking softly. Just consider it a little token of my appreciation prepared for my future granddaughter-in-law. I guess I won't be able to live to see your wedding. My vision completely blurred out. I shook my head and said, Grandpa Silas, I don't want it, he said. Listen to me, take it. This is just a little something from this old man's heart. If you don't take it, I'm going to get angry. Under Grandpa Silas's stubborn insistence, I finally accepted the card. A smile finally broke out on Grandpa Silas's face. It was as if a massive burden had been lifted from his soul, even the wrinkles on his forehead smoothed out. That night at 11:15 p.m., Grandpa Silas passed away peacefully. The exact second he left, I knew my very last family member in this world was gone. I should have been devastated, but it was like all my emotions had been violently unplugged. I just stood on the sidelines, completely numb, as if everything happening had absolutely nothing to do with me. On the day of the funeral, Alara accompanied me. In his portrait, Grandpa Silas smiled kindly, looking exactly the same as when I used to go to the Silas house to look for Serafina, but I knew I could never ever go back to those days. Serafina was dressed in head-to-toe black. She looked incredibly haggard, with massive bruised dark circles under her eyes, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Lysander stood right next to her, periodically holding her up, as if terrified she might suddenly collapse. After the funeral ended, I fell into a deep slump for a while. All day long, aside from work, I literally had zero desire to do anything. Until one day, a month later, Alara charged into my house and physically dragged me up from the couch. Her face was flushed with anger. She scolded me. Callahan, Grandpa Silas has passed away. That is a reality that cannot be changed. Exactly how much longer are you going to wallow in this pit? He would not want to see you looking like this. I offered a bitter smile and said, I know, but I just can't accept it. She grabbed me by both shoulders, stared directly into my eyes, and enunciated every word. Nobody can ever accept a loved one suddenly passing away, but you have to accept it, because you still have to keep moving forward. I shoved her away, not wanting to say a single word. I understood all the logic she was preaching, but I just couldn't muster up the energy to do anything. Grandpa Silas was so incredibly good to me, but because of Serafina, I had distanced myself from him too. During that time, how heartbroken must the old man have been? But he never ever came looking for me, and he didn't let Serafina look for me either. In his final dying moments, he even specifically left me a chunk of his inheritance. And what the hell did I do? I clearly had the time to spend more of it with him, but I didn't. The more I thought about it, the more crushed I felt. Alara hugged me, gently patting my back, and whispered softly, Callahan, cry. It'll be better once you cry it out. The departure of a loved one requires an entire lifetime to fully process and let go. But you have to understand, nobody can stay with you for your entire life. My tears finally broke the dam and streamed down my face uncontrollably. I knew they couldn't stay with me forever. What killed me was, every single time I only realized how much I cherished them after I lost them, but it was always too late. I cried for a very long time. The heavy depression that had been suffocating me for so long finally eased up. My mood wasn't quite as rock bottom as before. She stayed with me for the entire afternoon. Seeing my emotions gradually stabilize, she finally breathed a sigh of relief. She asked, Does it feel a little less awful now that you've cried it out? I shook my head and said, It still hurts a lot, but I know I really do need to step out of this shadow. Because you're right. Grandpa Silas wouldn't want to see me acting like a zombie, she said. As long as you're willing to step out, that's what matters. Alara looked at me, her eyes brimming with encouragement and a bone-melting tenderness. My face inexplicably felt hot. My heartbeat also showed distinct signs of losing its rhythm. I quickly snapped my head away. I was just trying to think of something to say when suddenly, my stomach let out the most inappropriate, thunderous growl. Absolutely humiliating. Alara froze for a second, then chuckled softly. You rest on the couch for a bit. I'll go whip up something to eat. Okay. Her cooking speed was insane. In less than half an hour, she brought out 2 dishes and a soup. And the color, aroma, and taste were all top tier. It was a complete 180 from the biohazard level dark magic cooking I expected. After washing my hands, I sat down in the chair, looked at her and said, I didn't expect your cooking skills to be this pro. She scooped a bowl of rice for me, smiling as she said, did you forget? In college, I studied abroad for 3 years. The food outside was absolutely atrocious. I had no choice but to cook for myself. Gradually, I just learned how to cook. I dug into my memory. Yeah, there was something like that. Except back then, because of Serafina, I hadn't contacted her in a very long time. By the time I heard the news, she had already been abroad for half a year. I nodded and said, yeah, I remember now. After eating, I stood up to block her from clearing the dishes. I said, I'll handle this myself. I've already troubled you way too much today. How could I possibly have the nerve to make you wash the dishes too? Alara smiled and said, if you feel bad about resting on the couch, then make me a cup of coffee. I saw you have an espresso machine. I did indeed have an espresso machine, but it had been collecting dust for ages. I nodded and said, sure, let me go clean the machine first, she said. I'll do the dishes. You go grind the coffee beans first. Under her stubborn insistence, I had no choice but to go grind the beans. Taking the beans out of the canister, as I ground them, the rich aroma of coffee filled the air. I actually kind of wanted a cup myself. By the time I finished pulling 2 shots, Alara had just placed the very last bowl onto the drying rack. Turning around and seeing me holding 2 cups of coffee, she smiled and said, I smelled that coffee from a mile away. Handing 1 cup to her, I suddenly felt a little embarrassed. I said, I haven't made my own coffee in a really long time. It might taste pretty terrible. She took it, took a sip, and her facial expression suddenly turned dead serious. Feeling incredibly awkward, I said, is it really that awful? Maybe I should just dump it down the drain. I reached out to grab the cup from her to toss it, but she unexpectedly pulled the coffee further away. With a totally straight face, she said, with these skills of yours, have you seriously never considered opening a cafe? Seeing the mischievous, teasing glint in her eyes, I realized I had just been trolled. I rolled my eyes and said, your face looked so grim just now. I actually thought it was toxic waste. She gave a cute little hemp and said, can't I tease you a little? Fine, fine. Holding my coffee, I walked quickly back toward the living room, but the corners of my mouth involuntarily curled up into a smile. I couldn't even remember how long it had been since I felt this relaxed just hanging out with someone. This feeling really wasn't bad at all. By the time we finished the coffee, it was already past 8 p.m. Alara stood up and said, it's getting late. I'm gonna head back. Okay. After that little episode, for the next month, my relationship with Alara got closer and closer. I honestly thought I would never, ever feel my heart race for another woman again. But lately I discovered that dead, silent heart of mine was faintly showing signs of rebooting. The next time I ran into Serafina was on my birthday. That day, Alara booked a table at a high-end Western restaurant with a panoramic view of the city skyline, asking me out for a birthday dinner. Our feelings for each other had been rapidly boiling over lately. We were literally one paper-thin layer away from making it official. I had a strong hunch that tonight our relationship was going to level up. So I dressed up and prepared myself. Sure enough, after dinner, she told me to close my eyes. Then she suddenly planted a kiss right on my cheek. She said, Callahan, I originally planned to wait a bit longer before confessing to you, but I can't wait anymore. Can you give me a chance and let me be your girlfriend? Her dark obsidian eyes stared intently into mine. Her gaze was completely serious, as if it held a million twinkling stars. She said, I know, you've been hurt before and you're terrified of getting hurt again. But what I want to tell you is, the one in the wrong was that woman who didn't love you. It wasn't love's fault. I hope I can make you feel the beauty of this world again. I hope you can regain the ability to love someone. Even if you say no right now, it's okay. I will keep staying by your side until the day you are willing to walk toward me. Her words melted my heart into an absolute puddle of mush. The way she treasured me lately was something I could vividly feel. Maybe I really should give myself a chance. I was just about to nod my head when suddenly Serafina charged out of God knows where and viciously slapped Alara right across the face. Before my brain could even process the absolute lunacy of the situation, the two of them were violently grappling with each other. Lysander, standing a short distance away, looked like he had been jump-scared into a coma by the scene. He stood frozen in place, his face looking absolutely ghastly. I immediately rushed forward and ripped them apart, pulling Alara behind my back, refusing to give Serafina even a millimeter of a chance to hurt her again. I asked, are you okay? Alara shook her head, wiped a tiny bit of blood from the corner of her mouth and glared icily at Serafina across from us. Serafina, if you want to act like a psycho, go check yourself into a psych ward. Also, I am absolutely calling the cops for what you did tonight. Serafina let out a cold, villainous sneer. You think I'm scared? Alara, I warned you to stay the hell away from Callahan. Hearing this made my eyebrows knit together so hard they almost fused. I turned to Serafina and said coldly, what right do you have to say something like that? You and I divorced ages ago. Right now, we are two completely irrelevant strangers. Do you absolutely have to see my life fall apart to be happy? Serafina stared at me with a look of pure, utter disbelief. She frantically spoke up. Callahan, I just don't want you to be scammed by her. Do you have any idea that when Alara was abroad, she dated over a dozen guys? I took a deep breath and said, even if she dated 100 guys or 10,000 guys, it is none of your business. Besides, weren't you the one who spent all your time scamming me? The color drained from her face. She opened her mouth, seemingly wanting to argue back. Suddenly, Lysander beside her grabbed her sleeve. Serafina turned and saw him. Her face shifted through a few expressions, but finally, she clamped her mouth shut. I was way too exhausted to keep looking at these two clowns. I directly took Alara and headed straight to the hospital. After getting her wound cleaned up, Alara suddenly looked at me and said, "Callahan, I'm planning to call the cops to teach her a lesson. If you still have feelings for her," I cut her off. "My feelings for her died a very long time ago. You handle this exactly the way you want to," she replied. "Okay." After calling the cops, Serafina and Lysander soon ended up at the police station. The scratches on Serafina's face had already been patched up. Her expression was terrifyingly dark. She was dragged off by the cops to give a statement. In the end, this entire clown show concluded with Serafina paying Alara $50,000 for medical expenses and psychological damages. When she walked out, her gaze locked onto me, staring me down with an intensity that was genuinely creepy. Alara took a step forward, shielding me, and said, "Serafina, you staring at my boyfriend like a serial killer seems a bit inappropriate, doesn't it?" Serafina bit her lip. "Boyfriend?" Serafina's voice sounded like it had been dunked in a bucket of ice water, carrying a bone-chilling coldness. Alara let out a light laugh and said, "That's right. Just now on the way to the police station, he just agreed to be with me. Do you have a problem with that?" Serafina shot back. "There is no way he could possibly fall in love with you." Serafina said it with such delusional certainty. Hearing it just made a wave of intense anger boil up inside me. I said, "Serafina, you aren't me. How the hell do you know it's impossible?" She replied, "Other than me, it is impossible for you to love anyone else." I enunciated every single syllable clearly. "The truth is, I have already fallen in love with her. And furthermore, I am not that much of an idiot. I wouldn't spend my entire life stupidly loving someone who wiped their feet on my feelings." Having dropped the mic, I grabbed Alara and walked right out. After Alara dropped me off at home, she headed back to her place. The next morning, the second I cracked open my front door, I saw a human figure standing right on my welcome mat. It scared the living daylights out of me. Squinting, I realized it was Serafina. I couldn't help but scowl. She looked at me with this hyper-pathetic, kicked puppy expression. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. Just a whole lot of dramatic hesitation. I took the initiative and spoke first. "Serafina, are you mentally ill? Standing outside my door at the crack of dawn? Leave right this second, or I'm calling the cops immediately." Maybe my face looked far too homicidal, because Serafina's expression looked a bit wounded. She took 2 steps toward me, but seeing my guard go all the way up, she froze again. She said, "Callahan, I'm sorry. I just didn't know where else to go besides here." Her bitter, tortured expression just made me want to laugh. I said, "If my memory isn't failing me, you and Lysander are already engaged. Pretty soon you two are getting married. Your lifelong dream has finally been achieved. What exactly are you still unsatisfied with?" Serafina let out a bitter laugh and said, "I also thought being with Lysander would make me happy, but after getting together with him, my mind is constantly flashing back to the scenes of when we were together." Shut up. I cut her off with absolute zero chill. "So what you're saying right now is, when you were with me, you were fantasizing about Lysander. And now that you're with Lysander, you're fantasizing about me? I don't think you actually like me, and you don't actually like Lysander either. You're just a chronic nostalgic who gets high off missing your exes. To think I had actually loved a woman like this for so many years." It genuinely triggered a physiological gag reflex. How could she be so incredibly vile? Serafina stared at me, her eyes overflowing with regret. She said, "Callahan, after Grandpa passed away, I finally realized that you are the most important person to me. My feelings for Lysander were just a temporary impulsive phase." I shot back. "I don't care if it was a temporary phase or what. We are divorced. Please take your self-righteous, delusional feelings and roll out of here. I never want to see you again." I used to desperately want to spend the rest of my life with her too, but she repeatedly handed me disappointment and sheer despair. That feeling hurt way too damn much. I absolutely never wanted to experience it a second time in this lifetime. Moreover, the moment I found out she scammed me just to get a divorce, my feelings for her had instantly turned into toxic ash. Serafina didn't move an inch. Her lips quivered. After a few excruciating seconds, she whispered, "Callahan, I've never told anyone this, but those few months living with you in that tiny rental room were the happiest days of my entire life." Smack! I raised my hand and slapped her right across the face. If she hadn't brought that up, I might not have actually hit her. But how could she be so insanely astronomically shameless? Does she have any idea what that period of time meant to me? I gritted my teeth and hissed, "You thought that time was the happiest? Then did you ever stop and think about how it felt for me to work 3 jobs a day, too broke to even ride a $2 bus, having to walk back and forth to every single gig every single day? That period of time was the darkest, most agonizing time of my entire existence. And not because I was spending every waking hour either working or commuting to work. It was because I gave you my raw, beating heart, and you threw it on the dirt and stomped all over it. If I could, I truly wish I could travel back to the day of our high school graduation, when you told me to wait for you. This time around, I would reject you without a microsecond of hesitation." A flash of heartache and regret crossed Serafina's eyes. Her eyes were bloodshot as she stared at me. She said, "Callahan, I'm sorry. I really did do a lot of things wrong. I know I was wrong now. Hit me. As long as you don't throw me away, I'm willing to do anything." This display of utter remorse she was putting on right now was exactly what I used to fantasize about seeing. But today, my heart didn't even skip a beat, because I literally did not care about her anymore. The astronomical damage she had done to me could never be undone. So why not just let myself off the hook? I said, "Serafina, it's not that I'm throwing you away. You threw me away first. I've just finally had enough of always standing in the same spot waiting for you. That's all." "Callahan, I retorted. If you keep harassing me, I am calling Lysander right this second. Serafina looked at me with a bitter, broken smile. She said, the only person I care about right now is you. Just as the words left her mouth, a highly sarcastic voice floated over from behind her. That person said, my boyfriend hardly needs you to care about him. Also, I've already recorded everything you just said. If you blow this up into a scandal, it won't do you a single ounce of good. Serafina's face turned violently ugly. She whipped around to glare at Alara. Alara, you don't even deserve to be with Callahan. Alara totally ignored her. She marched straight up to my side, latched onto my arm, and sneered coldly. If I don't deserve it, who does, you? Don't forget, you literally have a fiancé right now. Women like you, eating out of your own bowl while staring at the pot, deserve to be single for the rest of your miserable life. Serafina fired back. I can cancel the engagement with Lysander. The person I love is Callahan. Alara had a mocking smirk on her face, but her hand gripping my arm subconsciously tightened. She was probably worried that I still had residual feelings for Serafina, right? She said. Then maybe you should ask if Callahan even still likes you. In a flash, both women's eyes laser-focused directly on me. I frowned and looked at Serafina. Her eyes were filled with absolute desperation and fragile hope. It was too bad that, just like when I used to love her, her hopes today were destined to be crushed into powder. I said, Serafina, I really don't love you anymore. Not even a tiny bit. Please stop ruining the life I have right now. Serafina stumbled away, looking like her soul had been vacuumed out of her body. Alara finally let go of me. With a super serious face, she scolded, how could you just randomly open the door for another woman? What if she frames you for assaulting her? Then what? Seeing her face turning dark, I quickly scrambled to defend myself. No, wait, I had no idea she was outside. Plus, I've known Serafina for so long, she probably wouldn't stoop to something that crazy, she declared. From now on, before you open the door, check if there's anyone outside. No, this won't do. I'm installing a video doorbell for you. Alara was a woman of action. She said she was installing it in the morning, and by the time I got home from work that evening, the shiny new doorbell was already up. Well, is your girlfriend super efficient or what? I nodded. Very efficient, and this doorbell is actually great. You can see the whole panoramic view outside. She said, yup, but I still feel it's not safe enough. How about I just pack my bags, move in with you, and keep a 24/7 watch over you? Seeing her practically vibrating with eager anticipation, I rolled my eyes at her and said, the sound of your scheming abacus is so loud they could hear it on the moon. She let out a cute humph and said, fine, forget it. Then I'll just buy the apartment directly across from yours. Then I can just move in across the hall. I was completely speechless. Wait, are you serious? She said. Yup, but I haven't tracked down the owner of the apartment opposite yours yet. Once I find them, I should be able to buy it. Knowing Alara's master plan, I also started keeping an eye out to see if anyone moved into the apartment across the hall. I even went down to ask the property management, but the management cited owner privacy as their shield and flat out refused to tell me who bought the place. Half a month later, I finally discovered who the owner of the apartment across the hall was. However, it was someone I absolutely never expected, Serafina. Knowing that she had bought the place right after I moved in just made me feel insanely annoyed. Did she actually think her current stalker-ish behavior made her look hopelessly romantic? Being engaged to Lysander on one hand, while camping outside my door to gross me out on the other. Did she think I had the temper of a saint? I took a deep breath and had someone conveniently leak the fact that Serafina bought the apartment across from mine directly to Lysander. I highly doubted he could just sit still and swallow that. Sure enough, Lysander came knocking very quickly. Mr. Callahan, the apartment across from yours was indeed bought by Serafina. But that doesn't mean anything. At the time, she bought this place to be our marital home. We had no idea you lived right across the hall. After all, who buys a house and immediately runs a background check on their neighbors, right? Stared at him with zero expression and said absolutely nothing. He didn't seem to care and just kept rambling. Later, when her grandpa got sick, she wanted you to go see him, so she had someone dig up your current address. That's when we realized you bought the place right across from our future marital home. So, we just left the apartment empty and abandoned it. If you don't believe me, I can take you over there to check it out right now. It hasn't been renovated or furnished at all. I said, no need. I'm not the slightest bit curious. I just want to remind Mr. Lysander to keep a tighter leash on his fiancée. Lysander forced a smile onto his face and said, don't you worry, our relationship is rock solid. I shot back, is that so? Then why doesn't Mr. Lysander take a look at this? I slapped a screenshot from my security camera on the table right in front of him. It showed Serafina standing outside my front door for an entire night. Lysander's face instantaneously morphed into something unspeakably ugly. I said, Mr. Lysander, whatever drama you and Serafina have going on, I have zero interest in. I just hope she never shows up at my door ever again. Otherwise, my next call is to the police. Lysander said absolutely nothing. His face was as pale as a sheet of printer paper. I grabbed my phone, stood up, and left. As for what Lysander was going to do to Serafina after this, that was absolutely none of my business. Even though Serafina and I were divorced because we ran in similar social circles, we had a lot of mutual friends, so there were certain events where running into each other was literally unavoidable. A week after I nuked Lysander with the security footage, Alara and I attended a gathering organized by a mutual friend and bumped right into Lysander and Serafina. Seeing me, the fake smile on Lysander's face stiffened. The arm he had wrapped around Serafina's waist subconsciously tightened like a vice. Taking all this in, I couldn't help but sigh internally. During the years I was married to Serafina, every time I saw Lysander, I was just as paranoid, treating every rustling bush like an enemy soldier. Seeing Alara and me holding hands, the crowd instantly started hooting and hollering. So jealous of Sister Alara. Can't believe her secret crush actually became reality. Someone else yelled out, I'm so incredibly bitter right now. I confessed to my first love last year, and found out she's practically ready to pop out her second kid. It's a tragedy, I tell you. To be honest, back when Alara told me she liked Callahan, I told her to give it up. Because back then, Callahan's eyes were practically glued to Serafina. Who would have thought that after all the twists and turns, these two would actually end up together? As soon as those words dropped, the entire room instantly fell dead silent. Everyone's eyes shot back and forth between the four of us. Serafina and Lysander both looked like they had swallowed a lemon. Alara leaned comfortably into my chest, laughed, and said, "Yeah, thank God he finally gave me a chance." The crowd quickly erupted into nervous laughter, and the atmosphere seemingly returned to its previous harmony. Soon enough, someone suggested playing Truth or Dare. I originally had zero interest in these kinds of games, but since literally everyone else was joining in, me just sitting on the sidelines watching would be kind of lame. At first, my luck was solid, and I successfully dodged the bullet multiple times. Not long after, the bottle spun and pointed dead center at Serafina. The host asked, "Truth or Dare?" Serafina was silent for a few seconds, then muttered softly, "Truth." "Ha ha ha, then I'm not gonna hold back. Out of everyone sitting in this room right now, is there someone you still can't get over?" Serafina's gaze suddenly darted directly toward my direction. I frowned, suppressing the powerful urge to verbally decimate her. She said yes. The host pressed on. "Is that person Lysander?" Serafina pursed her lips. "That is a second question." The bottle continued to spin, and inevitably my terrible luck kicked in, and the bottle stopped dead in front of me, just as I thought. Nothing good ever happens when Serafina is in the room. This gang of lunatics always picked the most outrageous dares. I absolutely did not want to be forced onto a stage to scream. The Jiangnan leather factory has gone bankrupt, and the boss ran away with his sister-in-laws. So I swiftly chose Truth. The host asked, "Do you still have feelings for your ex?" I aggressively rolled my eyes internally. This question was purely designed to stir up drama. I said, "I literally have a new girlfriend. What do you think? What kind of functional human being wastes time reminiscing about a trashy ex?" Alara laughed and chimed in. "The person Callahan likes now is me. Next time, stop asking such boring questions." Right as she finished speaking, a sudden gasp of horror echoed from the corner. "Serafina, your hand!" The crowd universally whipped their heads around, only to find that at some point, Serafina had literally crushed her glass wine goblet with her bare hand. Shards of glass were embedded deep into her palm. It was a bloody, mangled mess. Fresh blood was steadily dripping onto the floor. Lysander tried to reach out to clean it up for her, but she violently shoved him away. It was like she literally couldn't feel the pain. She didn't even glance down at her shredded hand. She just kept her eyes deadlocked on me. She said, "Callahan, what you just said, you were lying, right?" Her eyes were practically swimming with desperate hope. I really had no idea what on earth she was hoping for. Hoping that, after she butchered my soul, I would still pathetically, desperately continue to be a simp for her. I stared at her with a face carved out of stone. "Serafina, I have always been a straight shooter. I have zero reason to lie about this. If I still had leftover feelings for her, I would never have agreed to be with Alara, because that would be incredibly unfair to Alara." "Impossible!" Her sudden hysterical screech almost gave the crowd a collective heart attack. Someone next to her stood up to try and calm her down, but Serafina shut them down with a single glacial glare. She stood up and started marching toward me. Her eyes were filled to the brim with agony and heartbreak, acting as if she was the one who had been ruthlessly dumped. Alara also stood up and said, "Serafina, Callahan is my boyfriend now. Your fiancé is sitting right over there. If you need to throw a psycho tantrum, go do it at him," Serafina screamed. Scram, seeing that she looked fully prepared to physically attack Alara. I stood up, my face dark with rage, and planted myself firmly in front of Alara. I glared at her icily and said, "Serafina, how much longer are you going to keep acting like a lunatic?" Serafina looked at me like a wounded animal. Her eyes were completely bloodshot, looking like she was about to burst into tears. She said, "Callahan, you are mine. We grew up together. You can only be with me." "How could you possibly fall in love with someone else?" I said, completely exasperated. "You were perfectly capable of falling in love with Lysander. Why the hell can't I? Or in your twisted mind, am I supposed to be your pathetic lapdog, worshipping only you for the rest of my miserable life?" Serafina frantically shook her head. "No, that's not it. I like you too. As long as you are willing to come back to my side, I can break off my engagement with Lysander right now. We can start over. Okay?" She looked so utterly pathetic and lowly, but my heart didn't experience a single microscopic ripple of emotion. I laughed. "Regardless of what happens between you and Lysander, it is physically impossible for me to ever get back together with you. Because right now, looking at you makes me physically sick." After dropping that bomb, I grabbed Alara and walked straight out the door. Originally, I hadn't wanted to completely tear her face off in public, but she was just too astronomically shameless. I honestly had no idea how she had mutated into a person like this. For all subsequent social gatherings, if Serafina and Lysander were there, I rejected the invite entirely. Later on, when people invited Serafina, they didn't invite me. When they invited me, they didn't invite Serafina. We didn't see each other again. I originally thought our paths would never cross again. But then, out of nowhere, the Silas Group launched an all-out corporate war on Vanguard Inc., Alara's company. At first, I had no idea this was happening. It was only when Alara's overtime hours became increasingly brutal that I sensed something was off and investigated. That's when I found out Serafina had been relentlessly suppressing Alara's company, and she wasn't using normal competitive business tactics. It was a complete suicide bomber. Destroy 1,000 enemies but sacrifice 800 of your own type of malicious competition. If she kept this up, the ultimate result would be mutually assured destruction. I honestly felt like she had gone clinically insane. When Grandpa Silas was still alive, she at least knew how to restrain herself. Now, she was acting like a literal rabid dog, biting anyone and everyone in sight. Because of this, I decided to go pay Serafina a visit. Seeing her again, my heart was a pool of absolute calm. Seeing me, Serafina looked incredibly thrilled. She immediately ordered her secretary to prepare all my favorite fruits. She said, "Callahan, sit down quickly. What did you come to see me about?" I sat down on the sofa and said, "I hope you will stop targeting Vanguard Inc., causing this kind of irrational chaos. Benefits absolutely no one." The two companies originally had a lot of business collaborations, but after Serafina threw her massive corporate tantrum recently, they had cut off almost all ties and basically became sworn enemies. The smile on Serafina's face rigidly froze. After a long pause, she spoke in a freezing tone. "You came here for Alara," I replied. "Yes." Yet she countered with, "As long as you are willing to come back to my side, I will let her off the hook." I said, "Serafina, if you keep targeting Vanguard Inc., your own company is going to go bankrupt too. The Silas Group was built from the ground up by Grandpa Silas. If he finds out you drove it into the ground, he won't be able to rest in peace in the afterlife." At the mention of Grandpa Silas, Serafina's expression wavered slightly. I was just about to press my advantage and keep persuading her when she suddenly snapped her head up to look at me. She said, "Right before Grandpa passed away, his biggest dying wish was hoping that we could get back together. If Grandpa Silas hadn't given me that bank card right before he died and hadn't said those specific words to me, I might actually have been duped by her lie." I laughed and said, "Serafina, even if you try to use Grandpa Silas's fake dying wish to manipulate me, I will still never get back together with you, because I stopped loving you a very long time ago." She shrieked, "Stop loving? How could you possibly stop loving me? You promised you were going to wait for me for the rest of your life." Her emotions violently spiked. She stood up and looked like she was about to charge at me. I said, "Don't come any closer." I quickly stood up and backed away, trying to put some distance between us. But my reaction seemingly triggered her rage. She sprinted toward me. In the very next second, she literally launched herself onto my body. What an absolute freaking psycho. Right now, she was clinging to me like a deranged octopus. No matter how hard I shoved, she found a way to tangle her limbs around me. When I pulled hard to rip her off, she actually used the momentum to strip her own jacket off. Left with no choice, I pinned her jacket down, gritted my teeth, and said, "Serafina, calm the hell down. Put your clothes back on," she cried out. "Callahan, as long as you come back to me, I'll let Alara go. Isn't it good to come back to me? I will treat you so well. I will compensate you 1,000, a million times over for what I owe you," I said. "You need to calm down first. Put your clothes on. Then we can sit down and talk about this slowly." She said, "No, if I let go of you, you'll immediately run away. I know you will." I ground my teeth together, internally cursing Serafina up, down, and sideways, but outwardly I had no choice but to try and pacify her. "Serafina, I promise I won't run. You go sit back down. I also have some things I want to say to you," she asked. "Really?" "Yeah," she said. "Callahan, you better not be lying to me." Serafina finally let go of me, but her pitch-black eyes remained violently locked onto my face. I sat back down on the sofa, frantically calculating how to escape this madhouse. Serafina seemed to read my mind. "Callahan, you don't need to bother figuring out how to run. I already had the bodyguards lock the door. I am never letting you leave." I frowned, feeling that her brain wiring was truly bizarre. I gave a bitter laugh and said, "Serafina, why won't you just let me go? If she truly loved me, she wouldn't have fallen for Lysander in college. She wouldn't have threatened to die over Lysander. Later, when we accidentally ended up married, I thought I could win her heart back. But the moment Lysander strutted back into her life, she couldn't wait to divorce me. She said, 'Callahan, we were supposed to be together for an entire lifetime. It's not that I refused to let you go. It's that you fell in love with someone else, and you want to run away from me.'" As she spoke, her expression morphed into something chillingly sinister. I felt utterly exasperated. If I hadn't gotten together with Alara, and instead kept hopelessly stalking you, you would absolutely despise me to the core right now. You don't actually like me. You just can't handle the fact that the guy who was always blindly chasing behind you suddenly got up and walked away one day. Your massive ego just won't allow it," she screamed. "No, that's not true." She walked over to me and dropped to a crouch in front of me. I clenched my fists. I had already made up my mind. If she threw another psycho fit, I had absolutely no problem giving her a taste of physical pain. She said, "Callahan, it was during those 3 months when I scammed you that I finally understood how much you loved me, and I slowly started falling in love with you too. It was just that back then I didn't realize it. Now I know that the person I truly love is you. Just give me one more chance. We can start completely over." Her eyes were practically begging for salvation. But the moment I thought about having to wake up and see this face every single day for the rest of my life, an unexplainable wave of nausea washed over me. Yes, my feelings for her had mutated from past affection into sheer, unadulterated disgust. Disgust to the point where I never wanted to see her face again in this lifetime. Why couldn't she just let us part ways gracefully? Why did she have to wait until she had butchered me so deeply to suddenly slap on a deeply in love mask and demand that we get back together? Where in the world do you find a deal that's sweet? I asked. Then what about Lysander? What are you going to do about him? Serafina's expression violently froze. After a long pause, she muttered softly, I was the one who wronged him. I will compensate him. Serafina, you are truly a selfish, self-serving hypocrite. You disgust me to the absolute maximum. She snapped her head up in disbelief. Callahan, why are you? I let out a cold laugh. I said, just looking at you makes me want to throw up. It is physically impossible for me to ever be with you. I would literally rather drop dead. Serafina was stunned. Her entire body froze in place like a stone statue. I ruthlessly shoved her onto the floor and started marching toward the door. However, in the very next second, the office door was violently kicked open. Alara stood in the doorway, radiating pure ice. She gritted her teeth and growled, Stay the hell away from Callahan. Serafina shot back. Alara, if you don't want your precious company to go bankrupt, get out of my way immediately. Alara sneered coldly and said, Serafina, did you really think you could threaten me? I've already secured a brand new corporate partner. I have zero fear of you right now. Serafina's face turned hideously ugly. She glared at Alara with death in her eyes. She said, no matter what it takes, I am going to snatch Callahan back. Alara rolled her eyes so hard she saw her own brain. Snatch? What right do you have? Aren't you literally just playing the role of the other woman right now? Serafina shot back. None of your damn business, Alara replied. He is my boyfriend. You tell me if it's my damn business. Just as the two women were about to charge forward and tear each other to shreds, Lysander's trembling voice floated over from behind. Lysander said, Serafina, didn't you tell me that you were going to settle down and live a good life with me? Why are Callahan and Alara here? I turned to look at Lysander. Right now, his face was ghastly pale. The way he looked at Serafina was drowning in sheer disappointment. Serafina bit her lip. Her expression was filled with bitter panic, but she didn't offer a single word of defense. Lysander let out a heavy sigh and said, Since you truly can't let go of Callahan, I will grant your wish. I will leave on my own. Having dropped that, he turned around and fast walked away. Serafina's face completely changed color. She sprinted desperately in the direction Lysander had vanished. Alara ignored me entirely. Her face was storm clouds, clearly furious to the max. I said, Don't be mad. I only came here today to try and talk her out of targeting Vanguard Inc. Alara took a deep breath and scolded in frustration. Has your brain completely flatlined? You know perfectly well she's a psychopath. Her behavior is so extreme. And you still came looking for her? On my way to the Silas Group building, I had actually texted Alara to give her heads up. I said, Didn't I text you a full itinerary report? I figured nothing major would happen. She gave a cold snort and warned, If you ever dare do something this stupid again, just wait and see how I'll punish you. Once we got back into the car, I asked her if she had genuinely found a new business partner. She nodded confidently and said, Of course, you don't believe in me? I said, I believe you. As long as you can pull the company through this crisis, that's what matters. Early the next morning, Lysander suddenly came looking for me. He looked utterly defeated. His face was pale, completely stripped of the smug, high-flying arrogance he used to carry around. He said, Callahan, I lost to you. Lost completely and totally. Regarding his current pathetic ending, I felt zero sympathy, but I didn't feel like mocking him either. I said, I never once planned on beating you. I was just making a gamble that she would eventually forget about you, and in the end, I lost the bet. He gave a bitter smile and said, It doesn't matter anymore anyway. I'm planning to leave her regardless. She didn't try to stop me. She said she would give me a massive lump sum to compensate me. Hearing this, my heart plummeted. A very bad premonition washed over me. Seeing my face darken, he sighed and said, You probably guessed it already. She is completely unhinged right now, no matter what it takes. She is obsessed with getting back together with you. You really need to be careful, he continued. To be brutally honest, I originally only got back together with her so I could skip a few decades of hard work. But seeing how crazy she's acting, insisting on kamikazeing Vanguard Inc., it seems their epic love story wasn't actually worth all that much after all. Lysander looked at me, his expression totally blank. You don't need to look at me with that kind of judgment. I was never exactly a saint to begin with. After thinking it over for a few seconds, I understood perfectly. For someone like Lysander, taking the massive payout and running for the hills was undoubtedly the absolute best option. I said, Thank you for telling me this. I'll watch my back. That very afternoon, I packed my bags and moved into another property because continuing to live in that apartment was genuinely unsafe. What if Serafina sneaked into my house while I was asleep? God only knows what kind of horror movie scenario would play out. Noticing my intense anxiety, Alara hugged me and told me that this nightmare was almost over. She promised she wouldn't give Serafina the slightest opportunity. Even though I moved away, I could still monitor the camera feed at my old front door. Serafina actually did show up. She waited outside my door for an entire night. It was only when she realized I wasn't coming out that she finally left. I didn't even go to the office. I just stayed locked in my new house all day long. Until half a month later, Alara came over and delivered the news. The Silas Group had officially gone completely bankrupt, and Serafina would never come to harass me again. I let out a massive sigh of relief. Serafina had tried to destroy Vanguard Inc., but her reckless kamikaze tactics of burning bridges with Vanguard had infuriated multiple major shareholders in her own company. Coupled with the fact that Silas Group's stock was in a terrifying freefall, many shareholders aggressively dumped their shares. Yet Serafina remained insanely stubborn, refusing to abort her war on Vanguard. Ultimately, this led to the catastrophic snapping of Silas Group's capital chain resulting in total bankruptcy. Hearing this news, I felt a wave of bittersweet irony, but also a spike of worry. I said, "She doesn't have some secret trump card hidden away, does she?" Alara replied. "Nope. Her legs were shattered by thugs hired by one of her rival corporate competitors. She's going to spend the rest of her life stuck in a wheelchair. Plus, I would never give her the chance to bounce back anyway." Hearing the brutal details, I felt absolutely zero pity. I just felt she completely had it coming. Back when I divorced her, if she had just lived happily ever after with Lysander like she wanted, absolutely none of this horrific fallout would have happened. But she was a greedy, bottomless pit, and she dragged her entire life into the abyss because of it. I completely stopped paying attention to Serafina after that. Before, she faked a bankruptcy just to trick me into a divorce. Now she was actually legitimately bankrupt. I wonder if she can finally comprehend the exact agony I felt back then. But none of that matters anymore. She is just a chapter of my life that has already been flipped over. She will never, ever have any impact on the rest of my life. I am going to walk hand in hand with the person I truly love and live a damn good life. Serafina's extra chapter. As far back as my memory goes, Callahan and I knew each other. The little Callahan was so full of vibrant energy. Everyone who saw him adored him, and I adored him too. My mom said she arranged a childhood marriage pact between me and Callahan. When we grew up, we were going to get married. I asked my mom what getting married meant. She said getting married meant two people staying together for their entire lives. Later, we went to elementary school together and met a new friend, Alara. The three of us walked to and from school together, bringing all sorts of delicious snacks from home to share every single day. We became the famous Iron Triangle of our elementary school. I desperately hoped the three of us could stay this close forever. But in middle school, I suddenly discovered that Alara had a massive crush on Callahan. In that exact second, an unexplainable, suffocating panic seized my heart. Alara had a better personality than I did. She wasn't bad-looking either. Callahan had mentioned multiple times that Alara was much better than me. Before, I hadn't taken it to heart. But what if he actually started liking Alara too? Then what would happen to me? I started intentionally and subtly making ambiguous, flirty moves on him. When I saw him blush and confirmed that he did indeed like me, I finally breathed a massive sigh of relief. The next step was figuring out how to orchestrate a massive fallout with Alara. Callahan naturally chose my side. The trio permanently fractured back into a duo, but I didn't feel sad in the slightest, because he exclusively belonged to me all over again. When the college entrance exams ended, I completely bombed it. I couldn't go to the same university as him. On the day of enrollment at the airport, I hugged him tight, viciously threatening him to never fall for another woman. And he actually did it, however. I was the one who broke the promise. In college, I met Lysander. His family was dirt poor, but his personality was resilient and fiercely stubborn. He was a completely different species from Callahan. Rich kids like Callahan were just way too arrogant and confident. But Lysander? He was like a lonely pine tree growing on the edge of a jagged cliff, stubbornly taking root. It made people instinctively admire him. After realizing I was developing feelings for Lysander, I did actually try to run away from it, but I completely failed. In the end, I fell madly, uncontrollably in love with him. I had absolutely no idea how to confess to Callahan that I had fallen for someone else, but he figured it out pretty quickly anyway. He gradually stopped reaching out to me. He kept his distance. At first, I felt a twinge of guilt and panic, but the sheer thrill of being with Lysander completely washed those feelings away. During the time I was with Lysander, I basically threw Callahan completely out of my brain. If Lysander and I hadn't had that explosive breakup right around graduation, I think I genuinely would have married Lysander. Back then, Lysander had no idea my family was filthy rich. I tried to convince him to move back to Oakhaven with me, but he stubbornly insisted on going to Northridge for work. We fought viciously. In a fit of pure rage, he dumped me. Then he immediately bought a train ticket and secretly ran off to Northridge. When I found out, I was furious. But I also desperately wanted to salvage our relationship, so I bought a ticket, intending to chase after him. Right as I was about to board the train, I received a phone call from Grandpa. He told me Callahan's parents had been in a horrific car crash and both passed away. I exchanged my ticket and rushed back to Oakhaven. Callahan's mental state during that period was absolute rock bottom. There was no way I could just abandon him to go chase Lysander. But after Callahan finally started climbing out of his depression, I saw Lysander post an update on WeChat Moments. Sitting directly across from him was a stunningly beautiful woman. In the comments, his roommate asked if he had started a new romance, and he openly admitted it. Later, I found out he only did that because he saw I hadn't chased after him, and his massive ego couldn't handle admitting defeat. So he purposely orchestrated that post. His plan was that when I inevitably came to confront him, he would dramatically reveal it was all a ploy to make me jealous. But fate is just a master of cruel irony. I never went to confront him, and just like that, we missed our chance entirely. I spiraled into a deep depression. I got blackout drunk all the time, and every single time it was Callahan who came to peel me off the floor. Actually, the very first time we slept together, I knew exactly who he was. I just couldn't stomach the reality that my feelings for Lysander were dying. So I lied and said I hallucinated the wrong person. Later, Grandpa used that incident to put a gun to his head, forcing him to marry me. Internally, I was resistant. But then I thought, since things with Lysander were completely dead anyway, marrying Callahan wasn't the worst idea. At the very least, it would make him happy. After we got married, we lived a quiet, peaceful life. Sometimes he would plan little romantic surprises. I genuinely thought this life was pretty good, until Lysander magically reappeared. He told me he had never been with anyone else. He had been waiting for me this entire time, but because I never went to find him, he had no choice but to come find me. Knowing that he had quit his high-paying job in Northridge and crawled back to Oakhaven just to be with me, my heart was deeply moved. But I didn't hide the fact that I was already married to Callahan. At first, he was devastated. He packed his bags, ready to leave. When I was seeing him off at the airport, at the very last possible second, I couldn't hold back anymore. I hugged him tight. I begged him not to go. He stayed. But I had absolutely no clue how to bring up divorce to Callahan. I didn't want to hurt him, but I also couldn't bear to let Lysander down again. After racking my brain for ages, I engineered the brilliant plan of faking my family's bankruptcy, hoping the pressure would make Callahan initiate the divorce himself. That way, I wouldn't have to feel like the villain who betrayed him. However, completely shattering my expectations, Callahan actually gritted his teeth and suffered through 3 agonizing months of poverty with me. Watching him leave before dawn and return after midnight every single day, working himself to the bone until he literally fell asleep standing in the shower. I felt incredibly moved, but my heart also bled for him. So many times, I almost blurted out the truth. But every time the words reached my lips, I just couldn't figure out how to say them. I realized I had made a catastrophic mistake, but at that point, I had no idea how to fix it. So I just kept doubling down on the lie. I never expected that Callahan would suddenly uncover the truth himself. He gave me exactly what I wanted and asked for a divorce, but I couldn't feel even a microscopic drop of happiness. After the divorce, I tried desperately to stop thinking about him. But the entire time I was hanging out with Lysander, Callahan's smiling face constantly haunted my vision. I think I must have genuinely gone insane. Later on, when he officially got together with Alara, I practically lost my mind. How could he fall in love with someone else? How could he be with someone else? I was willing to burn everything to the ground to snatch him back from Alara's side, but the way he looked at me had completely lost all the love it used to hold. All that remained was pure, undiluted disgust. I genuinely believed that as long as I dragged him back to my side, one day he would inevitably fall back in love with me. After all, we grew up together. We were the most important people in each other's entire lives. I started launching a psychotic corporate crusade to destroy Vanguard Inc. The company's shareholders desperately tried to stop me, but I had zero intention of pulling back. In the end, it directly caused the total bankruptcy of the Silas Group. I was also brutally crippled, my legs smashed by thugs sent by a rival corporation. For the rest of my miserable existence, I will be confined to a wheelchair. I lost all of my pride, and I lost the persons I love the most. Now, my only wish is that Callahan spends the rest of his life happy and joyous. May his path be smooth and safe, even though none of that will ever have anything to do with me again.